If you're interested in the short-term rentals market, you've probably heard of Airbnb. Maybe you've seen some studies by third parties that have talked about what does Airbnb do to the rentals market. Or maybe you've heard of other companies that offer to resell raw data from Airbnb, and you may be wondering, where does all this data come from about the listings? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how you can extract listings from Airbnb using a technique called data scraping, so you can make visualizations just like this by the end of this video. Because Airbnb doesn't offer an official API to the public, we have to resort to the next best thing, called network interception scraping. So this is when we go to Airbnb.com or on their mobile app. If we browse around and use their site normally, as a legitimate user, if you look at the network traffic that Airbnb sends back to your web browser, they're actually going to be sending structured JSON data very similar to what an official API would look like that you're able to view and copy down from because the data is being rendered publicly on their website anyway. Now, it's most likely against their terms of service to use these endpoints outside of an official Airbnb client like their website, but I'm not going to be showing you that today. I'm just going to be showing you how to browse the site normally, and if we just so happen to copy the network traffic that Airbnb sends us and use it in our own data analysis, that wouldn't be so bad because we're only copying down public information we're entitled to see and was already delivered to our computer. So without further ado, head on over to Airbnb.com in Google Chrome and right-click and open up the inspector, and we're going to take a look at their network traffic. So click on the network tab over here, and as we scroll and use the site, we're going to see what network traffic they're sending to us. It's going to be structured JSON data, so we can go and get clean data instead of trying to get it from HTML like most other web scrapers work. So let's just, say we want to stay in New York, and let's just use the site normally. And you'll see down here is all the network traffic that's going back and forth between us. They're doing a little bit of tracking, like autocompletes, things like that. So let's check out stays. Okay, and here's one that's caught my eye. It says sun-drenched one bedroom. Now, here's all the network traffic we got, and I have a funny feeling that the data behind this listing is somewhere in the network traffic, so let's find it. If you just hit Command F, you can actually search the contents of all this network traffic. So let's just type in sun-drenched and hit enter, and we get a hit. I can see that the data that says sun-drenched is coming from something called Explore tabs. So let's click on this, and Google Chrome shows me where this is coming from. I can see under headers, I can actually see the network request that it's making, and if I copy this URL, I can paste it and I can access it outside of their website. But like I said, that may be against their terms of service, so I'm not actually going to show you how to do that. But we can see what the API would look like. If we scroll down a little bit more, we can see what does the input to this endpoint look like. It doesn't look like we're giving it too much, but here I'm giving it a query called New York, New York, United States. So it looks like it takes in a string of a location of where I want to stay, and then it sends back a bunch of data. So here under preview, I can go under Explore tabs, and I can see sections, a couple of sections here, and listings. And here I see a bunch of listings. I get about 18 back. And if I scroll, I'm interested in getting the full set of listings from New York. So let's just paginate through. And I can see it says that there are about 300 rentals. I can go to the end, and I can see it paginate more. So let's search for Lovely Suite per this entry over here. And I can see the network request that got it. And let's just take a look at how it did the pagination. Looks like they're using a search session token. So as we paginate through the result set, each search has a unique ID, and we just keep passing that in each time. So it looks like the first search had this token somewhere into it, and we just passed that back into this request. And that offset we saw may have something to do with it as well. They also have another offset here, 288. So they have like 3 different types of offset. I'm not sure how they're doing their pagination, but whatever, we can figure that out. But what's more interesting is why do they only give us 300 listings back? So I have reason to believe there are a lot more than 300 listings in New York City. So how can we go and get all the listings? It looks like if we just put in a general search term, they'll give us only 300. And if we enter in something more specific, like a price range or specific amenities or a specific neighborhood, they'll give us more and more listings back. So let's see what their more filters say. And we could filter by price. But like I said about neighborhoods, I think that would be a good thing we could filter by. Because let's say I were to rerun this search for Union Square, Chinatown, all these different neighborhoods. They give me a lot of neighborhoods here, so I'm guessing a lot of these neighborhoods would have at most maybe 300 listings per neighborhood. So if I were to go one by one and start on Union Square and then paginate all through to the 300 results and then save them, I could go to the next one, Chinatown, paginate through all 300 results, save them, and go to the next one. So we're going to do that right now. So I'm going to click on Union Square and hit show. And now that we know the endpoint to look for, we can get rid of this search. And I'm going to filter Explore tabs here. And let's just clear this. And now when I go through here, I can just paginate. And as I paginate through all the listings, I can see here in my network tab, it's just going to keep populating with all the raw data. So now all I have to do is open this up, and under Preview, go to Explore tabs, Sections, listings, and go to each one listing, and I can copy down all this data. So what I want to do is build a map that shows me the latitude, longitude, price, and number of reviews for each listing. So I can get all that data here. I can see, if I look down here, I see latitude, longitude, I can see the number of reviews, I believe, is around here somewhere, review count 230, and they give me an average price, which just kind of shows the average quote for a typical night of the week. It's not an exact price, you don't do that until you go and book. And you can see it here from $123 per night, and you can get the raw price under this object, $123. I also give you a couple other things like the weekly price factor. We're really not too sure what these things do. Like I said, this is an unofficial API, so you have to take all these values with a grain of salt because you can't be guaranteed to know what these do in the Airbnb pricing model. But you can guess. So just keep scrolling and paginating through. You're going to be here for a while because you're going to have to go through like 500 different neighborhoods and scroll through each one like 20 times or so until you get all the data. So, just keep doing this one by one. Maybe you could hire someone to do it. You just can't actually hit the URL outside of their website because that may violate their terms. Oh no. So once you've finished scrolling through all these, you'll notice Google Chrome will have all this data cached for you, either in memory or it's in your hard drive. And if you click on the Response tab, you can just get the raw response here. So what you can do is you can just hit Command A, and you can start saving the JSON Airbnb gives you back on your file system. So all you have to do is just copy the JSON to somewhere on your local file system, and you can format it, you can see it a little bit nicer, and you just have to open up a new tab for each network response we got back. So let's do this one, and paste it in, format it, and then you just keep doing this, tens of thousands of times because Airbnb doesn't offer an official API. But if Airbnb did have an official API, it may look a lot like this. This is a web page I have a link to below that you can check out with some more videos and resources, and more importantly, links to open source software that actually go ahead and document some of these endpoints, and there are client libraries that you could run unofficially that you can access and get all this data from. I believe there's a Node.js one, and there should be a Python one or so. And what I did is, just for fun, I documented what some of the more interesting endpoints would look like here. So let's say we wanted to access the listings and get all that back in a CSV format. I would click on Listings, and the Steve C Data Platform would prompt me with the inputs I want to put in. So I could actually just type in my location here, like New York, and it would go ahead and forge the query for me that it would go and hypothetically execute to Airbnb following that open source software. And what's really cool is that if I were to hit this execute button, the Steve C platform would go and fetch that messy JSON over a proxy and automatically parse everything back into a set of collections in CSV format. It can also take care of automatic pagination. And not only can Steve C paginate for us, but the collections parser is actually able to go through all those neighborhoods that we saw. There's like 600 of them. And it's in another section of that JSON, and it's able to parse out the raw IDs behind it and automatically feed that into subsequent requests. So if you see here, there's another input called neighborhood ID. So what I could do is I could run this once for all of New York and then get back all of those neighborhood IDs, all 600, and then I could build a Steve C workflow that would go through all of those 600 neighborhood IDs, inject the value here under neighborhood ID, and then paginate through each neighborhood and automatically aggregate all the results back for each neighborhood ID. That would have saved me like 300 hours of sitting and copying and pasting from Google Chrome. But like I said, per this extremely stern warning up here, it may or may not be against Airbnb's terms of service, so I definitely did not hit this green button to collect all my data. Whew. Okay, I'm exhausted. That was a lot of copying and pasting. So I finished doing all that from Google Chrome, and I got to about 37,000 listings by going through all those different neighborhoods. So yeah, we went through Staten Island, a lot of all of them in New York. So I'm pretty happy with this number. I think 37,000 listings is a lot more accurate to the total number of Airbnbs in New York than 300. So I'm okay with this spreadsheet and then using it to build a map. So once you have your Airbnb listings in CSV format, no matter how you got it, we can do some data analysis. So real quick, I'm going to walk through an example in Pandas. I have a link to the Jupyter Notebook below, so you can click and follow the source code along on your own pace. So I'm just going to draw a quick visualization of what all those 37,000 Airbnbs look like on the map, because we get a latitude and longitude of the rough area of each listing, as well as the price and number of reviews. So I want to visualize all that. So I use a couple libraries here, including GeoPandas and GeoPlot. Just import them here. And the first thing I'm going to do is import that CSV I just showed you as a standard Pandas data frame. So here I just do listings equals pd.read CSV, and I can see a preview here of the listings data frame, which is kind of just a fancy way of saying Excel spreadsheet. So here I can see this looks exactly like my Excel spreadsheet. And a couple interesting columns I want to use in GeoPandas is give it the latitude and longitude. So what I want to do next is take my standard data frame from Pandas and convert it into what's called a geodata frame, which has polygon and point support, so it can actually graph those points on a graph and put them on a world map and do some really interesting things that we can get into in later videos. But for now, I'm just going to show you how to take a standard data frame and convert it to a GeoPandas data frame. So in this code here, you just create a new GeoPandas data frame, and the first argument here is the listings, the regular data frame, and then I give it here this geometry argument, and I use this method here where I just give it the two series. The first one is the longitude, and the second is the latitude, which is actually backwards. I usually do latitude, longitude, so just don't make that mistake because it's going to take you a while to debug. So put the longitude in first, and then the latitude. You can see what I'm doing here is I'm querying the listings data frame with the key in my CSV for each of the latitude and longitude. This path corresponds to the JSON we saw in Google Chrome earlier. That's how I did all my copying and pasting. And we can just take a little preview. You'll see it's exactly the same as a standard data frame, except all the way at the end you have this new geometry column, and it has a point. So this now shows the latitude and longitude in the special point data format that GeoPandas can go ahead and use. So once we're done here, I want to first draw a background of all of Manhattan, or basically New York City, all 5 boroughs. So I found this from a couple examples I'll link to below. But you just basically load the boroughs. It's a part of the sample data from GeoPlot, and you can build an axis object here. This is basically very standard, and then what we want to do is plot over it. There's also an interesting web map that you can use, which shows you more details of like where the roads are, where airports and attractions are. So that can also help provide context between why certain Airbnbs are maybe more expensive or are more dense in certain areas. But it kind of can get distracting and take away. So we can do either plot, just the generic geography or the detail plot. So all you have to do is just pick one of them and set it equal to your axis parameter. And once you get that, you can go, and all you have to do is run gplot.pointplot, and you give it, the first argument is the geo data frame that we made with that point column at the very end. And then here, just a couple other things. You have to give it the same projection of your axis. And you can do a couple things like tell it which column in the data frame to use for the hue, which is the color. So here in one of my examples, you'll see that I picked at the end to use pricing quote.rate.amount, if you remember it was what the price was in an integer, to color code. So I can see here I gave it k equals 8 to give me 8 buckets of price ranges. And I can see what it did is the yellow ones, or the cheapest Airbnb, 0 to 45 at night. That's pretty cheap. So I can see very few of them are in Manhattan. Most of them here looks like they're in Queens or the Bronx or in Upper Manhattan. Downtown Manhattan looks to be the most expensive. So if you want to stay in New York on a budget, then I'll refer you to right over here. There's going to be a lot of clusters. Looks right by LaGuardia Airport, which is also convenient for traveling. And then here we can see the most expensive ones go up to $10,000 a night, and these are all in Manhattan or in Brooklyn. And what I also want to do, if you notice the circles are of different sizes, I wanted to use the scale feature to make the ones with more reviews bigger, because that means they're getting more business. So it kind of shows me where the busier ones are that we can plot on a map. So we can kind of see where the most popular ones are, because they're just kind of piled on top of each other, and we can get a sense of where the more dense and popular Airbnbs are. So you can see there's a real popular one in downtown Manhattan. Maybe it's a hotel. We can go and look at the details in Pandas. Same with here. The wider circles are more popular ones. And we can get kind of a clear idea of where all the smaller ones. I see a lot of smaller Airbnbs in like Alphabet City. So these are more smaller apartments that maybe they don't get as a lot of turnover, which is interesting. And we can do a couple more things we wanted to pull through the raw data. So now I want to know, what kind of data are you interested in analyzing from Airbnb? Do you want to look at occupancy rates, or do you want to look at more geographical analysis? Do you want to try to predict how much an Airbnb is going to get in another year or so, or look at historical data? Let me know in the comments below so I know what videos to make, and be sure to subscribe to Steve C Data so you don't miss those future videos. Let me know if you like this, and if you didn't like this video, let me know what I could have done better and what to make next time. That's it for now. Take care. Hope you found this useful and learned a little bit about data scraping, and stay data driven.